If you're lacking a little bit of focus in your real estate investing, and maybe you're interested in pivoting from single family to multifamily, stay tuned. In this upcoming episode, we're going to dive deep into both those topics. Let's go! Hey gang, how's it going? Russell Westcott here. I help real estate investors start, grow, and scale the real estate investing portfolio of your dreams. So hopefully I got your attention from the opening introduction to this video. In this upcoming video, I had a great opportunity to sit down and go one-on-one with a good friend, an expert at sourcing top quality multifamily properties in the Edmonton, Alberta marketplace. The one thing that jumped out to me in this interview was how focused and how niche Chris is in his target. He knows exactly who his target is. He knows exactly his type of property. He knows exactly his type of client, and he does nothing else but focus on just providing that product to his clientele. So if you're interested in diving headfirst into multifamily properties, and maybe you're interested in the Edmonton marketplace, you're going to love this upcoming interview. So make sure you watch this full video right to the very end. Have a pen and paper in hand because you will be taking plenty of notes. All right, let's get after it. Please help me welcome Mr. Chris Davies. All right, Chris Davies, how you doing, my friend? Long time no see. Welcome to the show today, my friend.
Thanks very much, Russell.
Hey, Chris, we're being just a little too formal here. We got I had to get up and I actually ironed a shirt here today almost. So it's like...
I have to admit, I was wearing sweatpants and a sweatshirt today because the majority of my day is just like in the office making calls and doing paperwork. Yeah. I'm not a suit guy on the best of days, though.
Well, I haven't worn a suit or a tie for quite a while, actually. And I actually sit there. I gave away most of my ties were actually being used as yoga belts I was trying to practice yoga. And I said, so I just gave away most of my ties. But Chris, we had this on the calendar for a couple of weeks now, and I've been just thoroughly looking forward to it. It's been far too long since you and I have chatted, and I look at this young man in my camera here, and people, if you're listening to it on podcast, it won't do us justice. But I find the YouTube videos. You'll see Chris here in a second. But you're a veteran in this real estate game, aren't you? Like, how long has it been since your earliest memory within real estate?
Oh, earliest memory. Well, so there's two things that are like my early yardstick in the sand. The first time I ever got a paycheck for doing real estate stuff, I was 12, so it was 1994, and it was it's spring break. It was like this time of year I got paid for sweeping a parking lot. Earliest memory, I think I was probably 4 or 5, because there's a facility downtown at Edmonton called the George Spady Center. It's one of the very few shelters where they will take guests in who are still drunk. And Dad stopped to replace a mailbox, and he locked me in the truck and said, "Don't touch anything." And I was like, all right. I was 5. I had no idea. And I watched a guy come out, meet his buddy, and they punched a hole in a Lysol can to drink it. And I was like, what the hell did I just see? And that one has stuck with me. And I still, we don't manage the Spady Center anymore or manage anything, but I talk to the people who run it now and other places in the area, and you see things that cannot be unseen. Yeah. But that would have been probably the earliest memory. It's still there.
Now, so you've been in real estate pretty much all your life, and generational in many respects, haven't it? Mm-hmm. And and how far back does it go? How far back does the family lineage within real estate go within your family tree?
The unbroken lineage would be Grandpa, and he started buying buildings with friends in the early 70s. He bought a bunch of apartment buildings. He helped fund some projects with a friend whose company is still involved in real estate. We did find one other funny thing, especially having just gone through COVID. Grandpa's grandpa, or maybe only one generation removed, owned a hotel in a town like around Bruderheim or Lamont, just north of Edmonton, which they actually turned into a hotel, or turned into a temporary hospital during the 1917 Spanish flu epidemic.
Wow.
So I need to dig that picture out of like the family scrapbook somewhere. So in one way or another, it's been a long time, but Grandpa, Dad, me. Yeah.
Well, how old are you now?
I'm 40 this summer.
40. So suffice it to say, you've been in real estate almost your whole life, really.
Totally. Yeah. I ran away from it a couple times. My undergrad's molecular biology. I traveled a couple times, but I keep coming back to my destiny.
Now, and your kids, are they starting to get involved in this too?
Yeah, a little. I mean, it's funny because they profoundly understand what it is that I do. Yeah. And sometimes that's because, I mean, the majority of what I do today is to sell apartment buildings, which is feast or famine. So sometimes they know, like, we're on a budget, and sometimes they know it's party time.
Yep.
But the stuff I own, they've always, they recognize both parts. That fundamentally, the way I think of all my stuff, I love like Don Campbell's old line, we are rental housing providers. They recognize that whether it's my investments or whether it's my work as a broker, we provide homes for people. And so when I go deliver gift baskets or fix something, I almost always bring a kid along. I don't do that very much anymore because I have managers, but they are often right there with me holding tools or talking to clients. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I just as an FYI, I creep people's Facebook profiles before I jump on, and I grab some photos of things that are really probably important to each of our guests. And what a beautiful looking family that you have. And Chris, that hair, where did all that hair come from?
I know. Actually, pink shirt on the side. We just got his hair cut. Those are pictures from this fall.
Right.
I don't know. And they all love the super long hair, like the older two. It's probably my wife's thing. I don't know. Neither of us have blonde hair.
Well, it's just, the beautiful picture of you and Megan there. And just make sure you say hello to Megan for me, please. It's been far too long since I've had a chance to see her as well.
Hey, professional photos are worth it. We have a photographer who does like little mini, like 20-minute sessions every year. We buy one every year. Great idea for presents.
Yep. Now, before we dive into the meat and potatoes, not that this hasn't been meat and potatoes already, but I have a fun, quick story about Chris and I of doing a recording. And I was racking my brain trying to remember how long ago it was. It was probably 12, 13 years ago, maybe even more. I was toying. How long do you think that was? Back in the rain days, back out on the farm, out on the property.
I would have been living in Kelowna, and I moved to Kelowna in the fall of 2007, and we moved away in the summer of 2009. So somewhere 2008.
So let's call it 2008. So that's 14 years.
14. Mm-hmm.
Wow. So here's the story. So I was doing a little bit of interviewing of experts at that time, and we had a little, pretty janky setup for microphones and stuff, and we were trying to record this kind of stuff. And in essence, it was early podcast. It was before podcasts was even a thing, 14 some years ago, and we put it out to the members. And I think I did about a dozen or so episodes, and I never stuck with it. Chris, we should have stuck with it. We could have been the one getting the Joe Rogan $100 million contracts, if you will, right?
We were definitely ahead of the time, ahead of our time. I don't know that I want all the gong show that comes with the Joe Rogan podcast thing these days, but it is a lot more fun to do. It's a lot more fun to do with video. And we, guys like you and I, we were already messing with this a lot beforehand. Yep. COVID's just made it so that all your guests have all the tools all the time. Yep. It's opened a lot of fun doors, but my version of that story too, because I learned one thing that day that stuck with me. You had a whiteboard on the wall beside your desk, and it had Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and you only had one word on each day. And I was like, what is this? And you said, that's my to-do list. I only get to do one thing a day, really. But then I've done 200 things a year, and that has stuck with me forever. Yeah.
Wow, I should maybe rekindle that again. Actually, my list has gone to 5. I said every day I have a list of 5 things that I must get done, non-negotiable.
As a digital guy, back to like the paper book.
Yeah, I do too. I use a high performance planner, and it's 5 things I need to get done every day, which are in alignment with my 90-day priorities, which align with my 12-month goals, which align with my values, my vision of where I want to get to. Now, do we get to every day? No, we're not perfect, but at least we have the intention of starting the day that way.
Yes. I also hired a new coach this year. I know we're getting down a little bit of a rabbit hole, but I hired a new coach for my work as a real estate broker, and she is kicking my ass, man. She is really great. It's really expensive, but when you're ready to, if you want to perform at an elite level, You need to be willing to put the money and the time and the effort in to get to the elite level. And it will challenge the hell out of you, but it's been very worthwhile and very strange.
Now, I'm a firm believer in coaching. I have many coaches myself, and I kick many a person's butt myself. Sometimes,
Absolutely.
A good coach needs to be coached as well, because you can fall into a little bit of a trap. I read something just recently. James Clear, the guy who wrote the Atomic Habits, said that sometimes coaches
on my bedside table now.
It's a phenomenal must-read book. And one of his quotes he said was, sometimes coaches forget what it's like to be a student. And you need to have that mindset of being a student and being a beginning investor and being in that again, because sometimes you can normalize. You've been in a business for all your life and you forget what it's like to actually be a student or to transact properties. And you not fall asleep at the wheel, but you have ebbs and flows of things, and you get stuck. And sometimes you just need to jump and jolt yourself into some action as well. All right. Okay, Chris. So speaking, let's. Your name will probably not ring a bell for a lot of people, which I think is a challenge. But you authored the book "Apartment Buildings That Outperform." Chris Davies, right there. Wonderful book. It's one of those reads that I call it short but profound. It's not an in-depth War and Peace novel about everything about multifamily investing, but every word in there is absolutely profound on that. So guys, I highly encourage you, if you are looking to, get into multifamily or you're a multifamily investor, pick up Chris's book, Apartment Buildings That Outperform, dive into it and read it. Okay. Any other books in the works for you, Chris?
We have slowly been playing actually with another book that's or the idea of a book about intergenerational wealth. But my style of writing and researching involves a lot of a long interview process, and we've got a lot of other priorities for the moment.
Yes, the Department of
Apartment Buildings. The original website for that book is currently down because we're redesigning everything.
Okay.
So if people want a copy, drop me an email or a note on social, and I'll send you a direct link, or you can catch it on Amazon usually. Yeah,
that's what I just jumped over here. It is definitely on Amazon. I pulled that up here too. So it's in stock, obviously, right? $22.29. One of the best $23 you'll spend on getting that book for yourself. So
drop me a line directly, and it'll be $20 plus shipping.
Oh well. Since we're here, Chris, what's the best way to get a hold of you?
Chris at chrisdavies.ca. There you go.
So if you know your name, you can easily get a hold of you, right?
Or you can Google me. I'm all over the place. Yeah.
Well, you are and you aren't all at the same time. For as much as experience that you have, and don't take this the wrong way, Chris, because I think you're a gift and you need to spread your wings a little bit more. You're a big fish in a smaller pond. Would that be a fair assessment?
Totally. Yeah. And I knew the minute you said where you were going with it. And the funny thing about my business, and I think this is true for a lot of the investors who listen to your show. I don't want to call it a show, but I guess this is the Russell Westcott show, is that I'm a specialist. Specialists get paid more than generalists. Specialists find better deals than generalists. I am not out there to be well known by investors. I'm out there to be well known by people who own apartment buildings. That's it.
Yeah.
I want those guys to know who I am. Everyone else is kind of a bonus.
Yeah. Well, that's a rifle approach. We're going to be using lots of fishing and hunting analogies here, aren't we today, Chris?
Yes. Yeah. I am a sniper. Yes.
Yes. More than a bazooka, if you will. Right.
Totally. Yeah. And it's funny. I mean, I say it that way to be as totally as direct and kind of exclusive as I can, because it's the type of single-minded focus you need to get the types of listings that I want to sell. In the real world, I'm more social than that and less of a jerk.
No, I totally get it.
Business brain has to be right there. Yeah.
Now, just as an FYI, for your here's something I just made note of just recently was somebody who sent me some of your listing packages to give them a second opinion on. And they also, I would consider you of the new style of commercial realtor in Edmonton, more in the new style. They sent me your listing package, and they sent me, quote unquote, the de facto people way back in the day that were the best of the best way back in the day.
Yeah.
And I'm sitting there and I'm comparing the two packages side by each, and I'm going, holy moly, Chris, you just blew them out of the water with the information, the presentation, the package, the details, the this is a wrong term, but I'm going to use it anyways, the realness of the numbers of things versus that. And the other one was just, it was such a night and day difference on the work you put. You obviously put a lot of work into the presentation package when you're listing somebody's apartment building for them.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. And we try really hard to get the right info in and make it look good. That's gotten easier in the last 10 or 12 years that I've been doing this, because it's kind of like, Fiverr, before Fiverr was a thing. I hired one of our old marketing girls to do our packages. I have, another guy I work with and an analyst. So we work really hard. The funny thing that's happening, which is, people in Ontario will get this in a way that people in Alberta won't. Things are changing just incredibly rapidly right now. And not necessarily in terms of prices going up, but even just in the last 6 months, expenses. My utilities are up 80% year over year. My insurance is up more than that. And so I can't use 2020's numbers. I need today's numbers. And not all of my competitors are willing to beat owners with as large a stick as I am.
Yeah. No, I just had a conversation with a investment partner today about, our utility numbers have doubled in a course of a year. And I don't want to get political here for a second, but it sounds like there's another tax coming in a couple more days here. So I'm going to date this in April 2022. But it's ridiculous. It went from a point where our utilities used to be a little bit of a profit center to now it's a subsidy. And I think some tenants are going to have some very interesting rental increases upcoming.
Yes. Yeah. And we're starting to see that. It's part of the reason why I'm using some of the analysts I am on our numbers. Not only do we want to have great materials and all the data together for someone before they get into the deal, we need to iterate on those numbers quickly. And sometimes if you're in, Toronto and people are bidding things up, that's pricing. Rents are about to change real fast. All of it. We need, it's the 21st century is finally kind of really coming to commercial real estate that way.
Well, and hopefully, hopefully that you're not in a jurisdiction where that you're capped with your rent increases at 1.2%. Yeah, 1.2%. Yeah.
I know. It's the funny thing too, though, is even though you and I say that and we love that, the longer I'm in real estate, the more pure commercial real estate I do. So I don't do leasing, or anything like that. But if something's fully occupied, we sell investment. I have an industrial building for sale right now. Anytime you get into those types of assets, they're fully triple net. The tenant pays everything. That gets more and more appealing. Maybe as I get older, I don't know.
Yeah.
Not interested in jumping through as many hoops.
Yep. Well, we're definitely going to dive into that map that's behind you of there. We're going to talk a little bit about that city. For those of you listening on podcasts, it's a map of Edmonton. And you were the first person I ever heard coin the terminology, the black triangle of death in Edmonton.
Yes.
And I wish I would have listened to you a long time ago. I think I owned 17 places in the black triangle of death. And I'll be honest, it lived up to every syllable of its name.
I don't think we called it death. I think we just said the black triangle of East Edmonton. That was
maybe I put death into it. Maybe I added the death into
it. The day, yeah.
And it's like when you have the police on speed dial and they're calling you quite regularly with tenant issues, it's a little bit of a. And here's the thing: is I'm seeing a lot of people coming into Edmonton with price blinders on, if you will, pro forma blinders. that
Totally.
they don't care about the tenant profile. They see a property. Oh, it's $110,000 for a townhome and it's $1,100 rent. Oh, I'll buy 100. Be careful what you wish for.
And you know what? A lot of people will go after those like $60,000 condos, like converted condo apartment units. Our mutual friend Robert McLeod was managing one. The cops came in chasing a guy who did an armed robbery. No one knows who shot who, but the caretaker ended up dead. Was just in another room and got shot. It's like there's a couple places with problems.
Yeah. It's not every area is the same in Edmonton.
Very much street by street right now. Yeah,
absolutely. Okay, so before we get into that, I know I glossed over a little bit here, but you have such a wonderful background and a story here, and it's. I'm going to take a little chunk. I'm encouraging everybody to go get the book, Apartment Buildings That Outperform. But you hit the people over the head with a sledgehammer right in the introduction, and you talk about building a staying power. Tell us a little bit about, from your perspective, what staying power is, where that came from, and why it's important to you.
Yeah, and it's funny that you ask the question that way, given what's occurred for me in the last 5 years. Like since I think I wrote the book in 2014. The original reason is that, my grandpa, Bill, bought a bunch of buildings in the 70s, helped fund some friends. We started he started a little empire. I think he had 15 or 17 properties. Some of them were land assemblies, some were apartment buildings. And when the recession in the 80s kicked in, he lost them, all but 3. And so, the thought of, like, for anyone who aspires to buy an apartment building, imagine putting your keys in the mail and sending them back to the bank, quite literally.
Yeah, that was the term jingle mail was created 100%. At that time. Yeah,
and it's back, in varying levels since let's say 2015, when the price of oil bottomed, went into free fall the first time or the 5th time, depending how you count it. So that was big, and Grandpa, Grandpa was always pretty open about what happened, and we were always, he started the management company, then Mom joined, then Dad joined, and that was like my whole life. Like, we'd have family dinner at Grandma's house, and we would talk about politics and real estate and things. The day that, if you've ever watched the movie Margin Call or The Big Short, the day that the whole thing goes kablooey, Lehman Brothers went to zero. Technically, the day asset-backed commercial paper collapsed, I bought a townhouse. I was under contract. Mom and Dad did a big reno on a flip, and I was like, let me buy it. It's simple. I already know what you got. Peggy from Peter Kinch's office called me in the morning and said, yeah, you've got 100% interest-only loan from TD. We just need CMHC to stamp it. That afternoon, she called me back and said, the markets have exploded. No one knows what's going on. The best I can do for you is 30% down. And I think I got a 35-year amortization at the time. But I went from 0 down to 30% down, and I did the deal anyways. But the first thing I did after I hung up with my mortgage broker, I called Grandpa. I was like, I didn't call my parents on that one. I called Grandpa. I was like, what do you do in these situations? I don't even remember what he told me. I just... I knew that when things went that bad, the guy with the answer, who had more experience than anyone else, was Grandpa. That's like, what will save you in those types of situations that's really what staying power is for. It's, what do you do when everything goes wrong? Equity, number 1, location, number 2. Yeah, that's it, man. That's what staying power, that's what longevity, that's how you get there. You have to have, the property in the right place, because you can't change that one. But you need equity.
Yep. Oh, and you need, and I think the way you framed it exactly in the book was staying power is more important than growth. And yes. everybody is very, very quick to say, I've bought hundred thousands and millions of properties, and I'm on the road to $1 billion and all that kind of stuff. Everybody's quick to say their growth numbers and where they're going. Very few people would sit there and go and say, you know what, I'm at a 27% loan to value and I have, 47,000 in cash flow. I can weather whatever storm I want.
And one funny thing, and I kind of despaired the lack of that, because all we see on social media is, I have this under contract, I did this deal, I need these investors. And I'm always like, guys, slow down. Like, stop acting like such an idiot. Buy a building and don't tell anyone. Here's an idea. I was kind of despairing the lack of prudence, maybe, or humility. And there's this new CMHC program for financing apartment buildings that will potentially let you do 95% loan to value. And I have a heartening number of clients who are like, no, that's just too much. Like, I want the rates and the other benefits that come with those loans, but I wanted it about, like, in the long run, like 65 or 70% loan to value and super low rates and long AMs. So I get the cash flow, but they recognize the safety that comes with equity. Yep. Like, you can't eat it. So it always feels weird to have a lot of equity in your portfolio. But, when it's a rainy day, man, they are the hip waders that will keep you afloat. No.
So what was, so Grandpa went through the challenging times, and I imagine that impacted your family throughout the time. And your dad, if you get a chance to please say hello for me, please do. It's one of the nicest gentlemen you will ever meet in your life. You guys had a property management company throughout all those years. What was that business like to be in? The PG version, please, Chris.
Well, yeah, I think I'd have to ask Dad some of this story. The property management company came about as a result of the recession, largely speaking. Which is that Dad was a carpenter and he was out of work, and we had properties of our own to manage, and Grandpa just started calling friends and asking if we could manage more. It's funny, as a lot of family businesses, and as a kid, you get completely wrapped up in them. You have no concept of what it's like to not be part of the family business. Even when I went to university, started studying science, I always worked for my parents, weekends or in the summer, except for maybe one summer. I'm pretty sure I worked for them every summer throughout university. But you get used to doing, I think, literally every job you can do in management. I think everything I could do that didn't require a license at that stage, and probably into the gray area on a couple. But there's a lot of painting fences and sweeping parking lots, and then you get into bigger renos, and then there's dead bodies occasionally, and then slightly larger project management. Property. I haven't told a lot of property management stories in a long time, so I don't remember any of my good ones right now.
Well, you were one of the first ones to be able to do a how-to guide on your blog about what to do if your tenant in your property dies.
Yes,
and lo and behold,
actually,
I had one of my first places ever. My tenant in the basement died. The first property I ever bought, in 12719 122nd Street in Edmonton. Mm-hmm. Tenant basement suite died, and lo and behold, you wrote that article right around the same time.
I'm glad it could be helpful. It's funny, after we did that, I don't claim that we are the inspiration for it, but the apartment association here actually started to put on seminars run by professional biohazard guys saying, here's what you do with the dead body. The Coles notes, call the police, they'll take care of the dead body for you, and then you can get a disaster cleanup company or whatever. It is a biohazardous materials site. But call the cops first. Don't worry about messing with the dead guy.
Yeah, don't, at that time it was, my comment was, what does your manager do? Phone your property manager first is one of the first conversations you have too.
Exactly.
So
one funny story from before, you mentioned owning a lot of stuff in the Black Triangle. I learned a tip from a paralegal about a year ago. Because I have lots of clients who pick up sketchy things. The case in question, they owned an apartment building, and they had bought the house next door, but had not closed on it yet. Abandoned or empty house they were going to renovate. So I got the other neighbors to keep an eye on it. It was in Eastwood in the Black Triangle. And so I get a call one day that says, hey, yeah, there are people in the basement doing whatever. And I say, okay. I go call the police non-emergency line, and they say, yeah, we'll send a car around. I say, great, let me know. I'll go let them in. I'll go open the door so you don't break down the door. Cops go in, and they come back out, and the one guy is starting to cry. He's laughing so hard. There's like a 25-year-old Aboriginal gentleman and a 40-something-year-old Aboriginal female. And they're like, when we went down the stairs, she was just standing there, full naked. Nothing sexual going on. She was just standing there, dead naked. Between the two of them, they had 36 outstanding warrants. So the tip is this. Normally, I would call the police switchboard, non-emergency line, and they'd send a squad around whenever. Don't do that. Call Crime Stoppers. Crime Stoppers will do the same thing for you, same outcome. But if those people go to jail, I get a cash reward. Tax-free cash reward. They give you a number, and eventually they call and say, go to a TD, give them this number, and they'll give you a check, or they'll give you cash, not even a check.
Yep.
I've never considered that type of revenue enhancement for my properties, but there you go.
When did you guys divest of your management company? When did you sell the management company?
2007.
Okay.
Yeah, my parents, we had moved out to a farm in the mid-90s. And we moved back into town, and they got rid of the management company around the same time, just a big life reorganization. And we sold it to, it was Davies Management and Realty. We sold it to a really nice guy named Jason Delaney, who did a really great job with it for 5 years. And here's the lesson. He sold it on to a gentleman who does not provide the same level of service, let us say. And I would be very happy to have my name off that company.
That's what I was going to say. Is your name is still on? It's still on there, isn't it, Davey? It's Davies Management, isn't it?
Yes, indeed. Yeah.
You don't even own the trademark to your own name. In many ways, in that business case.
Yeah, man. I did. There's a reason why I don't yet refer to my team publicly as the Davies Real Estate Group is actually as a corporate name and it's trademarked, but. Perfectly happy to fly under the RE/MAX banner and not have to worry about that again. Definitely going to think more carefully, should I ever sell it, about who controls the name.
Yep. No, I totally get that. And one of the things I remember, and it was mostly from your dad, and you were a lot of the behind the scenes of this too, is how many just those tiny little renovation tips or maintenance tips or just things that Brent would always share that just, they seem like so simple on the surface, but they were huge, especially when you put it over 12, 24, 72 unit apartment building. Each one of those things just added up to huge things. And he was a very big proponent. He owned his own management company, but he was also a very big proponent on self-management at the time too. Mm-hmm. And, it's just one of those things I won't do. I just can't do it. I can't do property management. I'm just not equipped for it. I don't have the patience for it. I just can't do it. And so anytime somebody who does do that as a business, I just, hats off, salute to each person that does property management in that respect.
Oh, 100%. And it's funny, people are always asking, what management company do you recommend? It changes, man. And property managers burn out, I would guess, on average every 2 years. And so really, you're looking for people, and they might hop around between firms and whatnot, but it is a moving target. And we're right now in the middle of doing a big call to a whole bunch of management companies, making sure we know the right people and what properties they'll manage, what areas they'll manage, because everybody does something different.
Yep. Well, think about it and this is the analogy I use. As a property management company, nobody is happy. The tenants are usually unhappy, and the owners are usually unhappy. So from both sides of your business, you're getting people that are unhappy because the owner's either complaining that something's not going well, or why is it vacant, or why is this bill too high, or why did you pay $300 to get a locksmith in? I could have got somebody for $72. And then on the other side, the tenants aren't happy too. So it's like you're getting it from both sides. And
Oh,
That's
and
why.
we had a very. You go ahead. You're
No,
that's fine.
and I was
got a
just about
mini
to
story.
say, the one thing that I've always made from the beginning with my relationship with my property management companies is always start with gratitude, always be grateful, always acknowledge, always cheerlead, always pump up, and always acknowledge how difficult it is for your teammate. Before, if I have an issue to have a conversation, I will always pump up, I will always cheerlead, I'll acknowledge and be grateful before we have a conversation about something I want to address. Because think about it for a second. Put yourself into their shoes. It is a very thankless and a difficult job.
Totally. I wrote down 3 things because you made my head explode. I'm going to grab one thing from over here. Because nothing is more important in this business of being a rental housing provider than having good management.
It's make or break. Anybody can buy and raise capital and the wheel and deal, and that's the fun stuff. From ownership to divest is the most important part.
Totally. Lots of people like to, it's like the cliche, make money on the buy. Bull crap. You go talk to Arlen Dolan and he'll tell you about deals where he overpaid and made more money in the long run because he didn't have to mess with it in the middle.
Yeah.
But it's an incredibly thankless job management. We had a very small black binder Mom kept in her desk that was every thank you we'd ever gotten. And I didn't realize until we were talking about this, this is a handwritten thank you card from a client, and it's filled inside and outside and on the back. Especially when you're in management, especially if you're managing your own properties, or if you're listening and you're a property manager for third parties. When you get a thank you like that, hold on to it. Also, if you're an owner, write handwritten thank yous. Send people pictures or whatever. It's awful.
I was just reaching into my drawer. That's what I have in my drawers, a stack of of thank you cards, and I write them out all the time.
Yes.
3 a week.
Oh, totally.
3 a week.
I don't do it often enough, but I really, really should. The best thing you can do for your property manager in a practical business perspective, and I'm sure I wrote a blog post about this some point in time, have an agenda when you call your manager. Do not call to chat. They are too busy for that. If they want to chat, they'll call you or take them out for lunch and then you can chat. But they got too much stuff to do. I'm calling because email them before you call them. Here are the 3 things we need to talk about today. And if it can be an email instead of a phone call, let them go.
No, absolutely. So let's consider that, pardon the pun, getting back to your book that you wrote.
Yes.
That was a previous chapter in your life. When did you become a commercial realtor? How long ago has that been now?
Yeah, so I bought my first property in 2008. I got licensed in 2010.
Okay.
Came back from Ireland, was working remotely here. And on the same weekend that I decided to quit, I got fired from my marketing job as part of downsizing before an acquisition, which was just providence, in my opinion. So I got licensed in 2010. I think we sold our first apartment building in 2012. And every year after that, it was another 10% of the income. And I made the hard switch to an office that only does commercial in 2016. Thanks to a good coach who gave me a kick in the backside and said, you need to specialize. And so, in the commercial world, even though I'm a RE/MAX guy, I don't belong to the MLS, don't have access, don't have to abide by the rules, don't have to put my listings anywhere I don't want to. And making that hard switch where if you wanted to sell all your townhouses or us, that's great. Let me refer you to our friend Jason or someone else.
Yep.
It's not my thing. Yeah, it's been an amazing focus.
Absolutely. Okay, so just if you don't mind me putting you on the spot for a second, and it could be just ballpark number, what kind of volume did you guys do last year within your business?
Totally. Yeah. Last year, and it's funny, 2021 was great. In 2020, I actually did, I worked for a developer for a year. My wife said, go get a paycheck. I'm sure there are people on the call who have real estate licenses or live in a commissioned world. It's tough. My wife said, stop it, go get a real job. And I did. And we still did overall volume of something like 20 million in 2020. In 2021, we grew that. We did 38 million, which was about 280 doors. And then we did a couple foreclosure properties. We did 2 leases just to learn, and a couple quarter sections of land. And we are on track to grow again about 40% year over year. I mean,
nice.
You get into the commercial world where to go hunting, to use a hunting metaphor. Anybody remembers playing the Oregon Trail as a kid? Those average apartment buildings, my average deal size is just under $2 million. Those are deer, and every so often you get a buffalo. You're like, that's that for me is like a 500 unit building. Like I have a couple deals right now that'll be like $20 million. That's a very different equation.
Right. So suffice it to say, you've got your finger on the pulse of from the commercial standpoint of what's going on in Edmonton and area. Is it just primarily the greater Edmonton area? Hey gang, we're going to jump right back into the interview. But before we do, I have a quick little special announcement for you. So if you're interested in the Edmonton marketplace, all indicators are pointing that Edmonton, Alberta, is on the rise. It's at the bottom of a market cycle, poised to start growing up. However, I'm seeing an awful lot of people that are making big mistakes. They're jumping in, they're not doing their proper diligence, they're not getting good advice before they jump into this. Chris Davies is a fantastic resource if you're interested in having that conversation, or maybe you'd like to book a consultation with myself. On a weekly basis, I help investors throughout the country invest into the Alberta marketplace. Whether you want to buy a property on your own, or maybe you want to work alongside me on an upcoming project, I'm here to help. So if you're interested in having a conversation to see if the Edmonton marketplace is right for you and not make those big mistakes, not step in those giant landmines, I can definitely share with you the good, the bad, and the ugly, and steer you in the right direction. So if you're interested in having that conversation, in the show notes below, wherever you're watching this video, there will be a link for you to book a consultation. I'd love to have that conversation with you. Now, let's get back to the interview.
No, we do pretty much anywhere in Alberta except for Calgary. Calgary is just very small and closely held, but we do a lot of Edmonton core and then secondary markets around northern Alberta.
Okay, awesome.
So Camrose, Vegreville, Rocky Mountain House, Grand Prairie.
So just, I'm going to date this, everybody, just for perspective, we're having this conversation in, let's call it Q2 of 2022. And what are you seeing going on in the Edmonton marketplace right now from a standpoint of commercial, multifamily, industrial? What are you seeing happening for activity on the street, like the boots on the street?
Yeah, definitely. I don't know enough about, the only thing I know about residential real estate anymore is literally my street. It's the only thing I watch.
It's a house where I live. Yes.
Exactly. I know the guy across the street sold in 3 days over list price. That's all I care about.
And that's fairly common, right, at the moment.
100%, totally. The apartment side has really, since COVID hit, has been characterized by just this huge inflow of out-of-town capital. I would guess 70% of my phone calls right now are Ontario buyers, probably 15 or 20% from Ontario, 10 or so from Alberta, and 5 from the US. And so there is just a lot of capital chasing deals.
So sorry, Chris, would you say first it was the BC money was the biggest share, or Ontario?
Used to be the biggest money. And I would say that, kind of like February 2021, in the same week, BC and Ontario both reaffirmed rent freezes and eviction moratoriums, and my phone exploded. And we've gone from 2 or 3 new leads a week to 3, 4, 5 a day, at least one of whom has in excess of $2 million in cash. It has been a remarkable turn. And so the market here where, prices, per door prices haven't gone up necessarily for the same building, but the good deals, you used to be able to get a really crappy building in the Black Triangle or in downtown if you paid cash for 65 to 75 a door. Now that's an absolute minimum of 80, 85. So you're up 25% for those really crap assets. For nicer stuff, a classic Queen Mary Park building has gone from being 90 or 95 up about 10 a door to be that 100, 110. And a lot of the newer stuff continues to sell very rapidly for a lot of money.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, yields are like cap rates are getting compressed quite a bit. We're seeing bonds, like the bond and fixed rates as well, push up. So that is going to start to squeeze a little bit. But I don't think it's going to push us that much here. I think we're going to see a market where cap rates get brought down because people are willing to come after the quality of the asset and chase the migration.
Yep. Are you starting to see now from a standpoint of the supply side, are you starting to see people that have maybe been sitting on some properties over the past while, they're finally getting, finally, I maybe have an opportunity to sell this place that's been and move on with life and get on with life. Are you seeing some of that as well?
Definitely, and probably in three slightly different shades.
Yeah. I call it the shadow inventory. And the shadow inventory is people that maybe bought at a peak, been sitting on it and just been waiting for things to turn around a little bit. And now it finally comes and they're going, okay, now I can get out.
Yeah, there's always some of that. But what I am seeing is families that have, like I have 3 people on the board. And you can see a whiteboard in the corner when we're on the wide angle. It's not up to date because we do too much right now for me to update that also. But we've got 3 families on the board that bought in the 70s and 80s, and they have not transacted yet. That's where I think the big inventory change is coming. And they're doing a couple of things because this new CMHC program makes debt kind of independent of the rate, really long amortizations, really low, like the government cut the fees in half. I don't know, last time government lowered the cost of anything. Apparently this is the thing.
CMHC is dumping a whole bunch of money into the commercial space. Like, thank goodness they lost all that market share because now they're getting a little bit aggressive.
Oh yeah.
Chris, they are dumping our money, our taxpayer money into the system, right?
You know, the dumb thing too is though, I mean, like they may be going a little bit too crazy here, but CMHC is a money-making endeavor. So they're making money rather than using my tax dollars. So there's some of that I appreciate. Yeah. It's also, in other markets than Alberta, a smart idea. It will convince a reasonable number of condo developers to build dedicated rental construction. And in markets like BC and Ontario and some parts of Quebec and some of the Maritimes, and especially in the north, going to make a huge difference in terms of the availability of rentals. In Alberta, it's just too much damn money. So we're getting families that are taking this as an opportunity to get out of the market. Now, sometimes COVID has had a very real impact on these family dynasties because people are dead. And when grandpa's dead, now the kids have to figure out what to do with the property. And it's a lot easier to divide dollars than doors. So, there are 3 big reasons people sell: death, divorce, and discord. Death is a big thing. And a lot of people have decided that they'd rather do other things with their life than manage real estate. And some of these families are making I have one family in particular. Chris, we want to be out of the market in 3 years. Help us figure out what to renovate, how to do our financials, and how to make an orderly transition out of the business. So there are a lot of people who are making this slow exit. Yep. And there's a lot of new construction in the market too.
Yeah, that's the one thing with Edmonton is there is, up until recently, I'm one of the biggest cheerleaders for Edmonton. I think it's a great investment opportunity, and I've been invested in the market for 20 years. One of the biggest downsides of Edmonton has always been, but I believe the city is finally addressing it, has been urban sprawl. Like, honest to goodness, we're over here, look at a canola field. Let's knock it down. New subdivision, right? The only thing stopping it from growth is Jasper and Calgary and the other. Like, there's no boundaries. But I believe the city has set aside that we're not growing out more, we're densifying in. Right, so they're letting a lot of applications for infills happen. They're not going out; they're going up, where they're taking big lots, subdividing. You can put a 3-house combo on it, or knock down a couple of them, and you now have an 8-unit apartment building. And they're doing a lot of that, as opposed to keep going outwards. Right.
I see them still going out a fair bit as well, but they've definitely made it dramatically simpler to do an infill application. And the new council appeared, we just had an election in the fall, new council appears to be just as pro-development as the old one. They just like now to add lots of little ornaments on the Christmas tree of development. Like, oh, we'll give you the extra 10 meters of height if you install solar.
Yep. Nope.
Which doesn't make any sense to me, but thank you, I'll take it.
Well, that's like why Jay and I, or Jason, who many of you in my show would know Jason, we were having great conversation. There's some wonderful developments in the Blatchford area of doing with geothermals and solar. Mm-hmm. And when you actually factored in the amount of money the solar was kicking back into the revenue pot, it was actually a revenue generator, a couple grand a month in some properties we were looking at on new development. So there are lots of cool things. But question for you. What are you seeing in the older apartment? Because, guys, here's a quick education. Chris can do this better than I can. There was a huge boom in the 80s in Edmonton. A lot of people built a whole bunch of properties. So a lot of the multifamily we'll find will probably be late 70s, early 80s. That's when a lot of it was built. You'll also see another boom leading up into 2006, 2007. And I think there's going to be another boom right now where you'll see these different waves of all this new building. Okay. So a typical multifamily property, a 1980s special in Edmonton, is there an opportunity to make some money on them? I know some of them have some deferred maintenance. Are you able to pick up at a price point, dump some money into it? Can you renovate it? Can you increase the clientele? Mm-hmm. Or can you make some money off of it is what I'm trying to get to.
100%. Yeah. Is there still life in these old? And actually, I think the ones where it makes the most sense are actually probably more like a 1968. Those properties work, and our mutual friend Mark Loeffler has been doing a bunch of these. We've helped with a lot of them, and he's got some great videos on it. You can come into that market and, for the sake of argument today, buy them for $100 a door. And, your existing rents, like a one bedroom is going to be like $750, and a two bedroom is going to be $800 to $900. You can do like, honestly, when Mark came to the market, I thought he was crazy. I thought he was going to screw it. Typically, like I own a building in Queen Mary Park. We might spend, there's 3 levels here. Absolute minimum to get it re-rented. So you're just doing flooring or paint or like single component replacement. $2,000, $3,000, $4,000. You do a big reno, you might spend $10,000 or $15,000, and then you might move that 2-bedroom rent from like $825 to $900, or from $850 to $950, about $100 lift. To think in terms of physics, Mark figured out what the escape velocity is to really break free of the old rents. It's 30 grand. So you buy it for $100 a door, you put 30 grand into it. And that means, like, if you think of a classic old apartment building, they're blowing out the wall between the kitchen and the living room. They put an island, like all those cabinets are gone. Everything goes on the back wall then. New island, they put a nice frame of box in the ceiling with pendant lights. You don't have to fix the stipple. All the doors, trim, washing, like in-suite laundry when you can. They're very limited on power supply, so this is tough. But dishwasher for sure. Everything else is just night, recessed lighting, the whole 9 yards. They turn those rents from $850 to $1,100 or $1,200. Yeah. Anyway, you do the math. A $300 a unit increase is worth $60,000 to $90,000 worth of revenue, or worth of value in the property you've created.
Yeah. So I had
that is where you can actually burr it.
Not 100%. I had Mark on episode 103 on the podcast, and and I questioned it. I really questioned it. And this is where sometimes having 20 years of doing something in one market, I questioned it, and it still might be early. And don't get me wrong, I'm hoping Mark gets it done and makes it work. But I was having a hard time seeing in the neighborhoods he was buying that people would pay $1,250 for, even no matter how nicely renovated it was.
Not wrong. Yeah, he's early, but I don't think he's wrong. And the funny thing, in Queen Mary Park, he's like, so there's 3 buildings, my building, his building, and a new one called the George. And I am the old school. He has brought his old building into the 21st century. So my 2-bedroom rent might be $950. His is $1,150, but a 2-bedroom at the George is $1,600. That's what new product in Queen Mary Park has to cost. So he's getting tenants the new fixtures that they want in an older wrapper.
Yeah.
And people are willing to jump through those hoops. It's the difference between feature-based decision-making and value-based decision-making. Yep. And it's kind of tough for me as an owner because I don't have 30 a door to drop into my building.
Yep.
To get to the next stage. But I do think that bringing this product into the 21st century is the type of value creation most of us have to look at. Yep. If not now, in the next 5 or 10 years.
No, I 100% hope he gets it. And from a couple standpoints, is number one, I sit there and I go, well, here's an interesting irony of this conversation. So we're having a conversation and we're talking about somebody pushing rents on a 2-bedroom to $1,250 for brand new, like a really nicely renovated place. Mm-hmm. Some people are listening to this right now going, holy moly, $1,250 for a 2-bedroom rent in my market is a discount. That's affordable housing, right? Now, and I sit there and I go, now, every one of my houses that are rented in the $1,850 rate for a brand new construction house, if they're going to start getting it for a 4-story walk-up 1970 special, I'm pretty sure my new construction properties are now going to start getting into the $2,200 to $2,400 to $2,800 range within the next year or two. So go, Mark, go, right?
Oh, totally. And the funny thing is that during COVID, I mean, this worked out brilliantly. In 2019, we sold my townhouse on the north side and rented a house in St. Albert, 800 meters from where I am today, with the plan that we would, I got 5 kids. I'm not renovating with them in the house again. Find a place, buy it, renovate it, and then move while we're renting. I paid $2,200 a month for a 1,400 square foot bungalow built in the 70s. You go to certain markets and it's worth it. Now, we'll throw Mark under the bus a little bit. Do I think that his model would work almost as well with less risk if he bought in nicer locations? For sure. Do I think that he's early enough and buying things well enough that he's got safety built in there? For sure. I mean, you and I talked before we were on the air. There are a couple of high-profile legal issues happening in Saskatchewan right now. And you and I both have acquaintances over the years who have gone bankrupt or gone to jail or have just pieced out with investor money. The thing I love about watching guys like you and Jason or Mark Loeffler work is that there's so much value brought into a property. There is no lipstick here. Like new construction is new construction, or the stuff that Mark does is so hardcore value oriented, and it's thinking about what tenants really want to. I say in the book, the stuff you touch every day should be nice. They absolutely take that to heart. There are a lot of people right now running around, especially in apartment building land, chasing the appearance. They're chasing pro formas. They're chasing the appearance of value add, but they're not putting the money and the effort into the building efficiently, and they don't have a system. And that's where I start to get worried about people.
No, I 100% agree. If somebody's, and Mark and I walk through it, and, buying it, say 90 a door, 95 a door, putting 30 in, you're into it for 125, the numbers are starting to make sense. But if somebody is, and where people made mistakes during a boom before was they bought things in the 140 range, they put nothing into it, and then they were condo converting it to try to sell it at 170 a door. And actually some people bought it at 170 a door. And that was a very bad day for that. And they put nobody added anything to the value of the property other than just upcharging 100%. It to the next person buying.
And they failed to ask the most important question, which is, you're selling it to these investors. What about the next guy? Like it's the First Nation thing about this, like 7th gen, like, what happens to the person after that? Like, we put a new mortgage on my building. I know that when it comes due in 2030, I have to have a clear vision for the next 10 years, or I needed to sell it before that point.
Yep.
And it's funny that you mentioned condo conversions, a place where there's huge value right now. Putting those converted condos back together as rental product.
Yep.
And there are buyers who will go out and try and do it. I think I'm the only guy in Canada that I'm aware of, for sure in Alberta, who actually does that on behalf of sellers. And I have 4 projects, one that we're just getting contracts signed today on, where we're putting them back together. Most of those are little 15, 20 unit buildings. We did a 20 unit building last year. One of them is 200 units. And we're bringing the big kumbaya, everybody come together, and we can turn that building around. But, they're fundamentally a flawed method of ownership.
Yeah. And the other thing, and I know you and I had a conversation of this offline probably a month ago when we were setting this up. I think there's also another huge opportunities for deep pocket money. Like, this isn't for mom and pop with $100,000 to go buy a suited house. This is for somebody with multiple 20 plus million, that there are some underperforming, under land utilized townhome projects in Edmonton that literally could be bulldozed, and where there's maybe 30 properties on there now. After they're done, there could be 70, 80, or 90 after they're done, with just a better use of land. Yeah,
definitely. And it's funny, you go back to the, some of them have actually traded. Some of the old money complexes like McLab has let some go. But when you look at the families that have been here since the 50s, like kitty corner to West Edmonton Mall in the West End, there is a quarter section with 15 little fourplexes on it. It's a ridiculously low density. It's just there as holding. It's not even an income property. That's just holding income. It might pay your tax bill. And those families were so smart. They could have done tons to it. They just decided to wait. And I should say, for investors, just because I get this question a lot about my particular practice, how much money is enough money to go buy apartments? Do you have a guess? Like, what in your mind, when you work with your coaching clients, how much do you need to have or be able to raise before you chase apartments?
Well, here's the thing. In Edmonton, the number's a lot less than you think. That's the thing I will tell people. Most people, I would bet the starting thing is $500,000 or more as a starting point.
Yeah.
That most people's perspective.
Yeah.
We were working with some clients that got into an 8-unit new construction townhome project, and it was $2.4 million. They got into it for around $400,000 for 8 freehold townhomes, brand new, at $300 a door.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, and it does work. I think the thing about every boom market is that, we are incredibly busy. I have a team.
Yep.
As a rule, I don't work with buyers. I work to find listings, and the rest of my team keeps tabs on buyers. And I think that to come in, it's funny that we're saying this out loud. I'm not intending this as a sales pitch for people who are like, oh, I can get in with just $250,000. Because that is inherently risky. You have a need for reserves. But I think it is interesting from my perspective when I look at who I've chosen to work with in the last little while. Just for me, across the board, I don't, as a rule, work with buyers. They need a personal relationship connection to me and large cash. The one thing I do want to say in a market like this, don't lock it up and then raise the money. You have to do it the other way around.
Yep.
Or because the market's so small that your reputation will get burned very quickly.
Yep.
If you piece out of a couple of deals midway because you couldn't raise the capital, you'll stop seeing listings real fast.
No, I totally agree. What's the old saying? And I think it was either Pierre Paul, it might have been Don that said it, is, you don't grow in, you don't go into it, you grow into it, right? And your reputation is so much more valuable in multifamily because it's a smaller world, right? Couple burn deals, a couple non-removals of conditions, and you'll see how fast your phone doesn't ring after that, right?
Totally. Yeah, you got to get in and just do some small deals. You're much better to come in and do a couple little deals. Your firsts are always going to be, singles or maybe doubles. You're not going to get a home run the first couple. Just let it go. Get a deal that you can afford, that makes some sense to you, and grow up from there. It's way better to come in and do a 10-plex or a 2 than to wait for the 40-plex.
No, I totally agree. So I know you probably have conversations all the time about people, oh, Edmonton, I've heard about it. I saw a video. This looks good. This looks promising. And you probably feel like you're repeating the same things over and over and over again about Edmonton. And so we're doing a recording right now, and we're going to, if you want, you can clip this and play it to whoever you wants to listen after the fact. What advice would you give somebody that's just inquiring about Edmonton and getting into the Edmonton market for real estate from a lenses of commercial multifamily properties? What advice do you give people every time?
Great question. Totally. And my business partner, Luke, will always laugh because this, some of these things are everyone's question all the time. And I start every conversation with a potential client by just being super curious. The part that people are often the least aware of is the economic fundamentals, which I feel like Mr. Campbell is on my shoulder, tapping the side of my head. And even in my conversation with Pierre Paul, like we're talking frequently about immigration. The Alberta government's economic dashboard, I look at frequently. I look at rates and lots of other things, but I'm looking at those numbers, especially right now when it comes to immigration. And kind of the interesting, like we've got some brain drain going to the US, we've got some older rich white guys going to Victoria. Most of the immigration we have is actually international coming here. And a lot of it is high end. Like, small anecdote. So Luke Gervais, who's my business partner, 3 weeks ago, he was like, I'm not gonna be able to make this tour on Thursday. He's picking up some people from through church. He got roped into picking 2 people up from the airport. They're immigrating here from India. They're both dentists. He's flying back every 2 weeks to keep his practice in India going. They're not showing up and driving a cab for a living. So that is huge. So the big thing is like, what's the economic underpinning? It's a lot more diverse than the oil and gas thing we think it is. Yep. Apartment buildings here are going to come in 2 really general varieties: the existing stock and the new build. The new build stuff is really hard to get into right now, as you know, because the cost of construction is just insane, and builders won't give you a price until it's done. They used to up until about 3-4 months ago. Totally. And now I don't have a single builder who will actually give you a price until at least the lumber is locked in. Yeah. Now, the new stuff is great. And if you look at the big picture, like we went from an apartment universe that's about 65,000 units in the primary rental market. We've added 20,000 between what's already done and what's in the pipeline in the next 12 to 18 months. I think we're going to be at something like 85,000 units in the universe. That's a huge growth. Now, lots of that is institutional product, but a lot of it is these little 4-plexes, 8-plexes, mid-sized buildings. Yep. The existing product, then we'll go back to the map, and we actually have an interactive map I should send you a link to. There are a couple of like little pockets like Queen Mary Park that is kind of like your classic, every corner of the block is there. But everything, or like right around the university, it's built in the 60s. They just had this solid block of apartment buildings. Everything else is scattered. We'll have an arterial road like 149th Street or Stony Plain Road, and they'll be just along that strip and maybe a block or 2 off. But it's this very dispersed, kind of stretched out market. And so the apartment building world here is all over the place. And frequently you'd look at a place like Stony Plain Road or even 149th Street or, getting into the Black Triangle, 118th Ave, it is block by block. And I have a building for sale right now that's 5 blocks off 118th Ave. It's beautiful. It's suburban, it's comfy, it's families, but you go 5 blocks south and you got hookers and blow. So it's a very nuanced market.
Yeah. So suffice it to say, in my personal opinion, and I can say this, and I'm saying it on behalf of you, Have quality representation of getting in. If you're going to try to do this on your own or just try to wing it and figure it out by just driving there and drive around and try to pick up things on your own, or find a builder and just go negotiate on your own, have somebody with 20 plus years of experience that can show you the good, the bad, and the ugly and has your best interest in heart. Chris Davies would be one of those people
Absolutely.
in the commercial world that I would recommend too as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I have a lot of good property managers who will quite cheerfully warn you about buildings. And you made me realize there's one thing I want to point out I'm seeing a lot of right now. Folks running around trying to wholesale apartment buildings.
And they don't even have a contract on it.
That also, totally. Yeah, like guys who don't have paper on it. I mean, like, it is theoretically possible to wholesale an apartment building. In the real world, I have seen it happen like 4 times in 12 years of doing this job. And especially if you think you're going to pick up an apartment deal from a wholesaler, you're not going to get the representation and protection. Like, you better really know what you're doing before you take that contract. The the crap I've seen in the last year will just blow your mind. And I had one other half thought that's totally left my brain, Russell.
Yeah, and here's the other thing I tell people is as well is a lot of people are bringing their local market paradigms, Ontario's and BC's and stuff like that, and bringing it into Alberta. It's same country, different things, and a lot of people in other things are going, well, just all I have to do is breathe, fog a mirror, buy anything, and it'll go up in value $100,000 a month. Yes, let's hope that does that in Edmonton, but what's your plan if it doesn't? Because if you don't know your tenant profile, if you don't match your tenant to the house, to the right area, you're going to have a very bad ownership experience, and you're going to be cursing real estate in a few years down the road.
And I think you and I mean, like, and I would probably include someone like Arlen in the same conversation because we've all worked a lot at raising money. The same type of pitch you might give an investor about a property in Toronto is very different here. Like, when I've raised capital before, I don't include appreciation, full stop. Yeah. Arlen famously,
he doesn't even include a cash flow.
Yeah. No, he's like, we're buying it. God only knows what's going to happen to it. We're just buying the best box we can. It is that different. I mean, yeah, the tenancy laws are different. We can just crank the rents if we want to, but man, you got to have a totally different paradigm when it comes to your investors. And I do a lot. I mean, it's where I get involved frequently in deals, is helping people structure the investment and the equity. And I have a really great lawyer who's helping do that too. We do it together. That you can, there are lots of ways to structure it that prioritize the safety and the returns for your investor, but without promising them 8% appreciation like you might do in St. Catharines.
Yeah. Well, here's the thing is, I think a lot of people's expectations are a little bit askew at the moment. Everybody, and I have a conversation with people all the time, and they're just sitting there going, well, geez, my place, what do you mean you're not forecasting it's going to go up $100,000 in a couple months, or I'm going to put in $10,000 and my appraised value is going to be $170,000 more. Like, what do you mean it's not going to happen? Like, I think people's expectations are just a little bit amiss at the moment, which is totally fine. It is what it is.
Yeah.
And I think there's going to be ebbs and flows, and that's going to pivot in other markets. And I have a feeling we're going to get a little bit more of that in Alberta and Edmonton in the next little while. But here's the line. Here's what I want to leave with here, Chris. And I know how busy you are, and you're helping clients out on a daily basis. And we're probably, somebody's maybe been listening to this episode going, holy moly, you guys have talked death of tenants, you've talked recessions, you've talked, bankruptcies, you've talked, what was the term you use? Hookers and blow, if you will.
Hookers and blow, yeah.
Yeah, that's right. You've talked the black triangle. Geez, these guys, you don't have a very positive outlook on real estate right now, do you? But I think it's the opposite, is we're real about what can go wrong in order to know what can go wrong in order to have all the good stuff. In your opinion, Chris, why have you been in real estate all these years, and why do you love it so much?
Yeah, it's funny. I mean, I am a huge fan of problem solving, and negotiation is my favorite part of this business. But at the end of the day, like, I still own that very first townhouse that I ever bought in '08. Mom and I still own it. And we are only now on our third set of tenants. We had one tenant who stayed for 10 years, small blip with another group, another tenant there for now, 4 years, 5 years? I don't care what it's worth now. I care that they paid that mortgage down from $180,000 to $122,000. They paid me $60,000 worth of free money. Like, it, they just keep on running. And when you do well with it, there is no other way to match it. I mean, especially getting into apartment buildings, it comes with risks. We've talked lots about risks, but you think about what we talked about, like Mark, you buy a building for 100, you put 30 into it. And then between refinancing and the market going, like, even if we just got to where pricing for a similar building in a poor market in Ontario, like Windsor might be, it's 200 a door.
Yep.
You've just made, let's call it 50 a door. But I own a 20-plex. I would like a couple $100,000, please. So the ability to harness this many other sources of streams of income is huge. So I love it because I'm always involved helping people be involved in it. And commercial real estate, as a rule, pays pretty well if you're good at it. As a landlord, most of it is set and forget once it's on track, and all those little streams of income just keep coming through.
Yep.
I hope that was a coherent answer.
Well, absolutely. Well,
I have two halves of my brain.
Yep.
I have the landlord side and I have the real estate broker side. And so I love both of them in different ways.
Well, I think really, if I was to encapsulate it, which you did a fantastic job, but what I heard was there are risks. Understand what those risks are, mitigate those risks, because on the other side, there's incredible reward if you can able to manage and mitigate the risk and have sustainability and longevity to stick it out for the long term in this game.
Absolutely.
Right on. One final thing, and here's a question I usually leave off with everybody here, and I'll let you go after this one question here. But before I ask this last question, I just wanted to acknowledge you, Chris. You've always been such a wonderful, upbeat, positive guy, and you're very giving, and you're always come from a place of service. You have a servant's heart, and you come from a place of inspiration and helping others. And I just wanted to just acknowledge you for the way you've shown up over the years and how you've grown over these years. It's tremendous.
Thank you. Yeah, you and I have both had some fairly tough spots, since we got to know each other. And, I think you and I have both had really productive conversations when we supported each other. So I'm glad that I've been that servant to you when I can.
Oh, awesome. So just thank you. And here's the final question. So let's say somebody is sitting here and they're maybe feeling a little bit stuck. Maybe they're just feeling a little stuck and just not sure what the next step is for them within the realm of real estate. What advice would you give that person to help them get unstuck and get them into some action?
I'm parsing that one a little bit. I said before that I literally say, I always approach every conversation saying that I'm curious. I literally have a Post-it note on the wall that says I'm curious. In the business of real estate investing, your critical success event, whether it's huge apartment blocks and towers or it's your first condo, is writing offers and getting offers accepted, but writing offers. You put it out there and you wait for it to come back. If you're feeling stuck, get out there and write some offers, see what sticks.
Yeah.
There are lots of, that's followed closely by the second thing. If you're feeling stuck, you need to connect with someone. So personally, yesterday I was feeling stuck about, growing my team. I reached out to my friend Julie Chu, who does industrial, and said, coffee next week. I need to pick your brain and I need a lift to get unstuck. if someone can help lift you up, that's great. If you're an investor and you want to get unstuck, go write an offer. It will get everything else in your life moving.
Wow. Well, Chris, I've been sleeping at the switch here. You've been dropping so much fire here. I've been sleeping at the switch and hitting the button here. And obviously, there's always huge bombs being dropped. Oh man, I'm just been. Happy, I've been just so engrossed in our conversation. I've been asleep at the switch with all the buttons here. But Chris, just want to thank you one more time. That was a wonderful conversation. I now that things are opening up a lot more, I'm going to be making my monthly trip back into Edmonton. It's been far too long since been there, and I want to come see you. I want to see the family. I'd love to, us to break bread, maybe have a scotch or two or something, while we're out there. And it's been far too long. So thank you for all your time and everything you've given here today.
I'm glad to be here. I actually, if you're planning or if other people are planning a trip, the Edmonton Real Estate Forum and the Western Canadian Apartment Conference, I don't run either event. I just go to them May 17th and 18th. Already got a bunch of clients who are coming. We're probably going to throw some sort of a party. But if you get a chance to line up your trip with that, they're great events. And I think you'd find that highly entertaining.
Oh, and I'm quite remiss here, Chris, about what would be the best place to get a hold of you? I've got your website up here. Is this the best place to get a hold of you for your website? Yeah,
the office website's the best place for the moment to find listings and things, or to catch me on LinkedIn. We're in the middle of doing a fairly significant redesign of a whole bunch of my online presence, thanks to my coach kicking me in the butt.
Yeah, and the best place is Chris at chrisdavies.com or .ca?
.ca, yeah.
.ca, perfect.
Yeah.
All right, Chris, thank you very much. Wonderful catching up with you. And guys, ladies and gentlemen, until the next one, talk to you very soon. Bye for now.
Thanks very much, Wes.
I sure hope you enjoyed this in-depth training video, and I applaud you for sticking around right to the very end. I believe in people that show up, put in the work, put in the time, and effort should be rewarded. If you're interested in taking the next step, if you're interested in going deeper and mastering what you just learned about in this training video, I encourage you to check out the Raising Capital Academy. So if you have found that you've received some value from the YouTube channel, or maybe you've listened to a podcast, you're only scratching the surface. That truly is just 1/10 of 1% of all the content and materials that have been created that are waiting for you on the other side. So I encourage you to check out the Raising Capital Academy. There's more than 100+ hours of video content, audio content, exclusive training material for those that are interested in taking the next step, those that are interested in going towards mastery, those that are interested in moving forward with velocity. So I would encourage you, wherever you're watching this video, around this video will be a link where you can check out all the details of the Raising Capital Academy. After you've checked out all the details on that page and you're interested in moving forward with velocity, click on the link that will take you towards the application. This is by application only. This is a community program and is for serious action takers only. So if you want to step up your game, if you have goals and dreams and aspirations for more, if you'd like to make a difference in the financial futures of the most important people in your life, I highly encourage you to check out the Raising Capital Academy. Click on that link and you'll be taken to the next step in the process to see if you qualify to take the next step forward for you. Hope to see you on the other side. Bye for now. Well, I sure hope you enjoyed that video. 2 simple things to do from here. If you're interested in continuing your journey, interested in continuing to become a successful real estate investor, just below where you're watching this, there will be an opportunity for you to subscribe. And if you're interested in continuing your journey, there is a hand-selected video over here for you. It's been hand-selected for you to keep your journey going forward. Thank you very much.